Hi, welcome to Quick Take. We have a very, very special episode. James, tell us about it.
Today, we are going to spend some time with Mike Fontaine with Lucid Point. Lucid Point is a cloud consulting company headquartered here in Denver. And they work primarily with companies who are partnering with AWS and Google. Mike and his firm are a proud sponsor of Quick Take. And so we thought we'd spend some time getting to know him and the company and talk about his leadership skills and how he got to where he is. Mike, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I
No,
really enjoy listening to you guys. So glad to be invited on the program.
Well, we're just thrilled to have you here. Thanks so much for taking the time. As we all of our listeners know, being an executive is a time-consuming and relentless situation. So why don't we start with maybe why don't you give us a little background about yourself and kind of how you got to where you are.
Sure. Hopefully, I won't go back too far, but I actually graduated from the Air Force Academy. I always wanted to be a fighter pilot. That was my dream since I was 6 or 7 years old, and was lucky enough to be an F-15 pilot in the Air Force. I did that for 10 years and kind of did everything I ever wanted to do. And when I left, I wanted to come back to Colorado, of course, and actually turned down a job with United Airlines. All my friends were going to go be airline pilots, and I went to work for a startup IT company in 1999 at the height of the .bomb era, if anyone is old enough to remember.
Yeah, that's a risky situation.
Yeah, so I learned a lot. And then after, go ahead.
No, please film it. I'd love to hear the rest of that story.
Yeah, so after a bunch of time in technology, about 6 years ago, I had this crazy idea. Even though I had 4 kids, 2 in college, we decided to start our own business. So obviously, I'm a thrill seeker, right? So
clearly, a man who's okay with risk and taking the giant leap.
That's right.
So that's amazing. So the firm that you're with now is the manifestation of like what really 3 different, or at least certainly the Air Force and that startup. Talk to me about that journey and how you the kind of lessons you've learned. Certainly as a cadet graduate and an Air Force pilot. Talk to me about the things you learned there that perhaps have paid dividends in your role as CEO at Lucid Point.
Absolutely. I always had a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, even when I was in the Air Force. Being a fighter pilot's a bit of a young man's game. So, but IT had similar challenges, and I always enjoyed being part of a high-performing, fast-moving team. And the great thing about information technology is you need to be learning. If you're not learning, you're falling behind, and things change. And that's kind of the way the military was as well. You're always kind of studying the competition and trying to keep up and trying to get better. And so I love being part of a team. We have a fantastic team at Lucid Point, and it's very enjoyable. Just that environment and doing good things for good people. So.
Did you find that, obviously the military has a structure and a code and the people are taught a certain way to deal with leadership. Did you have to change your style as a leader as you got into the startup ecosystem versus maybe the even now at Lucid?
Yeah, well, I think I'm still working on it. I'm still learning each and every day. But yeah, it's the military's fairly bureaucratic and fairly rigid, and you have to be creative to work your ways around that. And some of that translates. But the other kind of challenge that a lot of military people have when they leave the military is the military is your whole life, your friends, your ecosystem, your identity. And there's no kind of concept of just punching a clock. And so a lot of people struggle with that, but frankly, it's been so long. I'm so used to the IT world. I don't remember exactly the military world other than I did have a lot of fun. So.
Yeah, is that like having a baby? You forget all the bad parts, and you just kind of move on.
Exactly right. Yes.
I often get, and maybe there's a parallel too, since you have an engineering background, a degree, and going into leadership, like a lot of those folks that come from the technology side, like want to really invest in how do I become a good leader and what are the skills that I need and is transposed from being from an engineering background. Like, can you find any parallels to that or any advice you'd give to somebody up and coming through that path?
Absolutely. So one of the things I watched early on in my IT career, and I started in a data center knock, and at the time we didn't have a weekend
Mm.
night technician. So I came out of the military thinking I was the bee's knees, and there I am working nights and weekends, but it was still fun. But um, I've noticed that a lot of really successful entrepreneurs had had a partner who had maybe a little different skill sets. And so, again, back to that team
Yeah.
concept, you can't be good at everything. So having, either
Yeah.
a mentor or a peer or somebody who's not exactly like you and looks at things a different way, I think can be very powerful. I'm a big believer, the military, you get the benefit of a lot of leadership training, which is awesome. Obviously, the Air Force Academy does that as well. And I'm not sure the military necessarily teaches this, but I'm a big believer in kind of servant leadership, where I feel
Mhm.
like I work for all of the teammates at Lucid Point. Like my job is to help them, not the other way around. And I think I don't know. I just think that that feels good to me, and I like helping people. And so, being that servant leadership style fits for my personality. I think everyone needs to kind of fit their own leadership style to their own personality, and not again, you can't be good at everything, and so stick to what you're good at.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like where you're going with that, and I think one of the pieces of advice I often give people is if you're leading with your genuine self, you're that much better. And if you
Mhm.
try to wear the suit that maybe your boss or your mentor is telling you to wear, it's not going to fit. It's not going to be the comfort that you'd like, and you're not going to be true. And I think that's great advice, especially when you're focusing on servant leadership. I think that. So many executives talk the talk and want to be servant leaders, but it's not in their DNA. They're very much command and control. Um, let's talk about servant leadership a little more. And can you tell me some of the things perhaps that you ask or advise your teams to do when you describe servant leadership? When somebody comes to you and says, help me do more of that. Are there things that maybe you recommend or maybe some artifacts or ceremonies that you undertake to ensure that you're leading in that fashion?
Um, well, we try and have very open, honest, and direct feedback, and it's not always
Mm.
it's not all positive. So we just recently did a 360 review, um, and I love like self-deprecating humor. I just, fighter pilots have egos, right? And um, you know, I like to joke that I'm a legend in my own mind and all that stuff. And I got some feedback that said, you know, hey, it's not nice if our CEO says he's the dumbest guy in the room. Like that's not confidence building. So I think we have a lot of we all crave feedback, and I think it makes us better. It's not always good, and sometimes as an organization, we get into some heated debates internally. Um, like a family, at the end of the day, we all try and have dinner together, but it's not always. We're not always on the same page and all going in the same direction. And sometimes we need to talk about it. I think as a military person, former military, a lot of times there's a joke of like, we don't want to get too far outside the campfire. And so I kind of joke that, normally I would just surround myself with other fighter pilots and we'd all tell each other what a great job we're doing. And
Yeah.
that doesn't do anyone any good. So having some people
Right.
who look at things from a different angle, that's really healthy, and having some real debates, to keep those egos in check, right? The older we get, the the more experience we have, and we think we know things. And so I think, being open to that honest debate and getting more input is healthy. We try and do that.
Yeah, it makes me think about, like, from an engineering perspective, from a technology, you have to be curious. You have to really think about it and ask questions from a lot of different angles. And so if you can frame it for yourself in that way, that it's an exploration of understanding that different perspective. I always like to there's a great book called Thanks for the Feedback that I always talk about. And one of the things that was such an aha for me when I read it, because I grew up in corporate America where feedback was done annually. And so when anybody would bring up that word, it'd be like, oh, I have to get myself geared up for this. But it's that idea that our blind spots or experiencing ourselves from the outside is something we will never be able to do on our own, ever. No matter how much feedback we get, we don't know what it's like to be in our own presence and what that feels like. And
It's
so,
amazing. I will say,
mm.
to be in your presence is amazing. Just in case there was any confusion.
Good to know.
Just want you to make sure that that was documented here. That so
I
that
heard
You
going
think
you.
I
forward.
was a good softball player, right? I threw that one for you. That was, yeah. But I think, like, from a technology, when you were talking and thinking about being curious, that's what really came to mind for me, is being able to be open to that and listening in a way that you understand what people are saying.
Yeah, it takes effort to keep up. I mean, things change so fast. So I think that's the fun part, but it can also be a bit overwhelming. We primarily do Google Cloud work. We also do a lot of AWS work, but those platforms are constantly changing. They're launching new products all the time, and it's keeping up with different languages, and there's a lot of time in the background just trying to keep up and learning. But I guess that's also the fun part. I wouldn't want to be in a job where you weren't learning and trying to get better every day.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I would assume it also applies to the fact that you're a consultant, right? And so while even if you are, doing a Google implementation today at one firm, that next company is going to have a completely different set of problems and challenges, and talk to me about the criticality of being a good listener there. That feedback loop, obviously huge, important within your ranks, but certainly as a consultant, I'm assuming it's even more critical.
Yeah, I mean, my other favorite joke is my wife says I'm not very empathetic, but I feel like as a organization, we're very empathetic. A lot of our folks are very experienced, and we know kind of the old way of doing things and the new way of doing things. And um, it's easy. My kids are all off the payroll and supporting themselves, but it's their perspective. They don't know the old way of doing things and why people still have mainframes and things like that in their technology stack.
Sure.
And so I feel like one of our superpowers is the fact that we understand the old way and the new way, and we can help bridge the gap. And the new way is pretty cool and pretty smart, but it's not always the best way. Sometimes there's a reason to keep old stuff around. And so I like to think as an organization we're empathetic.
I assume that, I mean, obviously, to be empathetic as an organization, that's got to be some skill or attribute that you and your leadership team leverage. Do you think empathy is one of the powers that makes your firm different from others?
I don't know. I think we hire really good people and let them do what they need to do and try and empower people. It's not always easy, especially as a large ego fighter pilot, right? Sometimes I think my way is best, but we have some really smart people, and the more I sit back and let them make decisions and do things, the happier we all are. So I just try and do that.
That's always good advice. That couldn't have been described servant leadership any better than that, I think.
Yeah. And what comes with that is just trust. That's what really builds that, and good leaders are able to, people, you can't just say, trust me, you have to show it. And that's really the best way to do it. I wonder what you think about, parenting and being a parent and how that has really influenced any part of your leadership. And is there any stories you can tell us about that?
Well, I think I'm a better dog parent than a people parent, but some of the mistakes I made as a parent was I didn't want to let my kids fail when they were younger.
Mm.
Yeah.
And it's, my son forgets his homework and I know it's super important
Yeah.
and I don't want him to get a bad grade and then he won't get into a good college and then he won't, and so I start thinking about those things and I run his homework to school right before work and my wife says, "What are you doing?" And so you have to let people fail. You have to give them enough because you have to learn those lessons along the way. Otherwise, the
Hmm.
consequences just get greater and greater. And so I've learned that, especially engineers, you know, Susie, to your point, you can't just say I trust you. You have to kind of earn that status, and they need a safe
Hmm.
space. Technology's hard, and there's a lot of experimenting, um, and so they need a really safe space to do their best. And so we have to trust them. But yeah, maybe I've learned the hard way through my four kids. So
Yeah, those are tough lessons, and it is. We joke a lot about the glaring clarity of hindsight on especially with our kids, and so yeah, our employees get to benefit from that, but our employees benefit from all of our experiences, and I think that's the nature of the beast. Um, when I think about that, for me, it makes me think about mentors and folks that
Hmm.
were key to my success. I've got, whether it was a particular college professor who took a moment to really explain DiffEQ to me, or if it was an employee who made sure that I was in the loop when it came to corporate politics. Is there somebody that comes to mind, and how did they really help you be successful or help you where you are today?
I think there was a lot of really strong leadership by example, both in my military and
Mm.
civilian career. Um, some really fantastic, entrepreneurs who, um, just cared about their people and ran successful businesses. And so I don't know if it's, and I'm still good friends with a lot of those people today, but also just watching people be just extremely good at what they do. I have this funny story where when I was learning to fly the F-15, one of my instructors was the person who had the most experience in the F-15 on the planet, and he was this older gentleman, and he was just so relaxed, and everything was just so like like I was just sweating bullets, and your instructor is actually in a different plane. You're the wingman, he's the flight lead, and he's just calm and cool, and he talks on the radio, and just watching someone be just so masterful at what they do is always kind of inspired me to just be really good. And um, we've hired some really strong people who just take such pride in their work. I just really respect that. So makes life fun for me each and every day.
You make a really interesting point that I've seen a consistency among a lot of great leaders, where oftentimes there is a mentor or somebody that they affectionately remember, but so often it is that constant learning. It's the learning by example. In this situation, I saw this particular leader do it this way, or she handled it this way, and he handled it
Yeah.
that way, and it's never, you know maybe there are one or two, but in general, it's the aggregate of that. Do
Hmm.
you think that that's really what we're talking about here? Is being a leader is about finding learning opportunities wherever they might be?
Yeah, yeah, and it's the only good part about getting older is that you learn you don't know as much as you really think you do, and so the more you can watch what works for other people. The more you open up your mind, it's helped me a lot because, when I was much younger, I thought I had it all figured out. Now I realize I didn't. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that particular openness is what ensures that I continue to learn about uh, new employees from different parts of the world. I have staff all over the planet, learning different cultures, different technical backgrounds. Those database weirdos, they're totally different than the Java weirdos, and
Yeah.
so you got to learn that kind of situation, and then obviously generational. There's just a very different way of looking at things in some ways, and I think as a leader it's so critical that you realize that there's always a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
You know what I love is the whole idea of silence and putting that in. Sometimes I was talking to somebody recently that's an executive, and the advice that I gave them on what they needed to do to show up differently is to put space. When he asks a question or when somebody asks a question of him, to just put space in, because sometimes we jump in too fast. And I think back on one of my coaches back when, James, you and I used to work together, you know him well, John McKee, would say to me, the way to know wisdom's in the room is the person that's just silently observing and not trying to prove that they know. And I've always thought, what a great lesson to think about. Practice wisdom, practice just being still and allowing other people, especially as we are more mature or seasoned, it's a little bit easier to stay calm in that.
Yes. That's good. That's good advice. I
So
need to write that one down, Susie, because we're also
yeah,
spring
the
loaded.
wisdom, practice wisdom.
Yeah. We're also spring loaded to answer the question, right? Solve the problem in technology. So
Totally.
um, it's, sometimes you just sit back and listen. So.
Yeah. Can you think of something like when you look back on your career, is there like a moment that either you look back and you're like, good thing it turned out that way, or that you're just like, I'm really proud of how this turned out? Can you share with us some moment in that journey?
Yeah, I remember, wondering if I was too old to start a business. If you think back, the best time to start a business is when you're really young, and if it doesn't work out, you can sleep on your buddy's couch, and everything you own
Yeah.
fits in the trunk of your car. And so, um, I did a lot of research, and I thought, all right, well, it's now or never. And luckily, I have a fantastic business partner, Kevin Seba, who we started together, and that really helped, just you know having a buddy to do it together. But I look back on it now, and I just wonder, what was I thinking? Because I mean, it turned out fine, but I don't know. It was a risky move at the time, but again, there's never a good time. So I'm proud that it worked out well. I hope it still works out. We're doing great. We're actually hiring some more folks right now. So knock on wood, so far so good. But it's quite a leap to, we didn't pay ourselves for a year, and we didn't take any outside investments, and just
Mm.
betting on ourselves that we could make it. We saw this, we saw the cloud coming, and we didn't think that some of the companies that we had interviewed with, we wanted to stay as a team. We didn't think they could fulfill the journey. And so we felt like we had to start fresh, to be what we wanted to be. And it worked out. I'll say, probably lucky, right place at the right time. But it was very risky, riskier than I thought at the time, now that I look back in hindsight. But again, that's easy for me to say now, 6 years later, right? So.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love the just the risk appetite of taking that leap, and obviously can't help but assume that some of that muscle memory was learned in the cockpit.
Yeah,
That's
so true.
a huge ability to take that kind of risk, even if you're not 23 and can live on the couch.
Yes.
Yeah. And so what do you see in the future? Like, tell us what it looks like moving forward. Like, what are you looking forward to? What's the company looking at doing? Like, with all this talk of AI and everything that's on the horizon, what does that look like for you?
Um, it's all exciting. It is the AI is an overwhelming separate subject, right? We're all hearing about it. Um, we just want to continue to grow and do good things. We don't, there's no, we don't manage to any sort of exit strategy. At some point, someday I'll have to retire, but my wife said that I would drive her crazy if I retired. So we just want to run a good company with a good group of folks, and I truly enjoy our clients, and that might. I mean, maybe everybody says that, but we have just really good clients, and we just have fun, and we don't have any. I don't know. Like um, we just enjoy solving problems for our clients and helping them out, and it's not always easy, but it's just good folks that we get to work with, and so it's enjoyable each and every day. And I don't know what I would do without it, because working with a high performing team is what I've always loved doing, and I get to do that every day. And so I don't, we don't have any grand plans. We just want to keep on trucking. We're continuing to grow. We've brought on some people in we're now coast to coast. So we have people from California to Maine. We have some
Wow.
international clients. So it's been good, but no grand plans, just keep on trucking.
I love it. Well, gosh, with that, I think it's a great place for us to stop, Mike. This has been a lot of fun getting to know you and understanding what motivates you. So, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. I appreciate the time, and keep doing what you're doing. I enjoy the podcast. So
Fantastic.
Thank you. We love it. And make sure that look at Mike up, look at Lucid Point as well. Make sure that you tell him what you thought. Share your leadership story with him as well. So thanks for joining us. Feel free to share this episode with somebody you think that would love it. Make sure you reach out. James and I are both on LinkedIn, so message us and let us know what you thought of this. So with that, until next time, and just remember, we really appreciate you.